Um, Excuse me, can you please sit? Hello? Can you please sit? Yeah, thank you. Because we are competing with noise everywhere. No problem. Uh, but now we are going to have another exciting conversation about women entrepreneurship in Africa and what kind of supports we need. We have people online as well. I will briefly introduce the panel and talk about the report before we have a conversation informal, and we also have time for questions. With us today, we have Audrey S-Drako. She is founder of Sabon Sake, and she's been working in Ghana with regeneration. We also have online Caroline Kirabo, which is from CEO of M-Kyala Ventures. With me here, I have Nicola from BII Foundation. She is the director and head of climate, and she has been focusing on developing and implementing the climate strategy of BII. We also have Collins here with us, and he is part of our partner Westerwelle Foundation and Anza, African-based ESO, entrepreneurship supporting organization. Our speakers here, they are coming from different backgrounds, working in different stages of entrepreneurship to support African entrepreneurs. We know, and we have developed a handbook to highlight what are the necessary transformations toward climate resilient societies. Even though we need everyone on board to, I'm sorry, it's a bit on, yeah. Even though we need everyone on board to make the climate transition that we need, we know that women entrepreneurs are disproportionately represented even in climate accelerators and incubators. And this is even more worrisome because women are disproportionately also impacted by climate change. And we know that we have an eco-gender gap, which means that women more often are concerned about environmental issues than men. And with all of this together, we see that we are not as much represented in these places. So with this in mind, we developed the We Clim Equally, a gender-smart handbook for climate programs. Later on, we are going to show again the QR code so that we can download the ebook. And if you are tweeting or posting, you can use the hashtag #SystemsChangeNow and tag Climate-KIC. And we are going to be reposting and interacting with you. But first, I will introduce briefly what are the questions that we are going to be discussing in the panel. First, we want to know more what are the challenges that we are seeing across Africa for women entrepreneurs to participate in accelerator programs. We also want to know what initiatives ESOs are introducing to surmount these challenges. What is the role of financial institutions here, and what support is needed to enable access to accelerator across the continent? Before I pass to our panelists, I will briefly introduce the handbook. We developed this targeting more the incubators and the accelerators. But of course, anyone is welcome to download and apply the steps that we developed. The first part is a section concerning goal setting. You are going to set what is your mission and your vision to accelerate the inclusion of women in your programs. And you are also going to do a situation analysis to see where are you standing there. You also have a bonus annex that you can do you can build up the persona of your programs. In the second part, we have 4 steps that you can follow to implement what you set up. First, we recommend that you build and grow your team's diversity as the first step to walk the talk, because we know that more diverse teams will also be more equipped to support a more diverse pool of entrepreneurs. And this diversity should cascade towards the coaches, the facilitators, and everyone that is part of your innovation ecosystem. We also want you, the second step, to implement strategies to promote your program to the right entrepreneurs. The third step is to support climate entrepreneurs in a gender-smart way. So you also have to assess, if you want to include more women, what particular needs these women might have as entrepreneurs that you want to include on your program. So for example, a few entrepreneurs might say they might need help with daycare during the program, and other things. So it's very important for you to access and make sure that you are including them. It also includes a gender based language so that you can use words and do a process that will be more welcoming to women. And finally, the fourth step is to select the most promising climate innovations in an inclusive manner, which means also having a more diverse jury and be able to implement criteria that will also help for diversity. And the final part is a work plan that has several steps that you can choose interventions to start these programs at your own accelerator or incubator. So first of all, I would like to ask the two entrepreneurs in here, what do you see? What have been the challenges that we outlined here? Do you have any personal experience related to any of these challenges? How did you approach anything that helped with this? Perhaps we can start with Audrey and then Caroline.
Hi, my name is Audrey, and I'm lead at Sabon. It's a climate tech organization, a company in Ghana. I'll quickly go into a few of the challenges that come to mind. I think it will be with, for instance, if there's a call for application, right, for a program that an accelerator and incubator it's about to start in whatever country. The language that tends to be used and the call for application matters. And I'll give the example of myself. There was an accelerator started by Standard Chartered somewhere in Ghana, but it's across Africa as well. And when I saw the call for application, I was asking myself, do I need to do this? Is this for me? It was Women in Tech Incubator, and I asked myself, I started to look at the language and the age range that they had put there, and how they spoke to the audience or those who mattered. I think it was warm, it was inviting, it wasn't cutthroat or restrictive, for instance, in the sense that it might read, if you don't have this skill set, or if you're not 5 years experienced in this, don't apply. It was more warm. If you have an interest, if you have an idea along these lines, if you're passionate about this, apply. Take a step, take a chance, just finish up the application. For me, that was embracing and allowed me to apply and not just self-sabotage at the initial onset. So I'll say challenges would, the first challenge would be, especially with call for applications, if you don't have a more accepting language in how you type out or word out your call for applications, then that either stops women from applying for such climate tech accelerators or incubators. So that's what comes to mind right now, language as a challenge, and how that is worded in call for applications and other arenas. Yeah.
Thank you, Audrey. What about you, Caroline? What among the challenges that you mentioned, you identified yourself, and how did you overcome it? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Caroline Kirabo, and M-Kyala. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, and M-Kyala Ventures is actually an agenda lens investing advisory firm. So a big chunk of the work that we do is also to support accelerators, funds, impact investors, and other entrepreneurial-facing organizations to be gender strategic. So what's interesting is when accelerators come to me, their biggest challenge is that they're unable to get a sufficient number of applications from women entrepreneurs, and hence they typically work their programs with 30% and below women, right? So the question is always, can you hear me clearly, Christine? Should I speak up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, the question was, how did you overcome these challenges?
Yes, so I'm answering that. So because I support accelerators to be gender strategic, right? So I'm talking in the context of the accelerators I work with. And so one of the biggest challenges that the women themselves face is in the context of calls for application. This is what I typically say. If you're looking for 10 women to support in a program, a call for applications online to sieve them through 300 is not the most effective. Women work a lot within networks of entrepreneurship within which they feel very safe and within which they have a lot of trust. And those networks do a lot of work to support them already to grow their businesses. So even terminology like accelerator, like my colleague just said, is not what you hear a lot in what is the typical entrepreneurial ecosystem for your average female entrepreneur in Africa. And so when organizations put out calls for application online, on LinkedIn, on these type of forums, they are normally not specifically clear on what the value add is. And women entrepreneurs, and I've done this work a lot, unlike male entrepreneurs, don't go after a program just because it's a program. They typically go for something that is answering a question, a specific challenge that they have. So they need always a little extra layer of detail. They don't apply at the face, they need more detail. And typically the best way to create that trust for the programs that you're trying to advertise is to have some sort of like information sessions. This is something I encourage with like the heads of business, women business networks, so that they can be the champions for you to find the quality female entrepreneur you need for that program and also get them to engage. So I caution accelerators not to go after women because you need the numbers to show the balance. That means you're going to use a method that's not very effective. So the challenge women have is an information challenge, and they never fully understand what exactly is this accelerator going to bring to me that's different from the network and the peer groups that I already have. So you must market to women. Women will not apply because you have a big organization name. You must market your programs to them. And so sometimes there's an imbalance there in how these programs and their value is communicated. And that's where women typically find the challenge.
Oh, thank you. Great insights. But before we deep dive again on the challenges and opportunities, may we hear from what you're doing, introduce yourselves properly. So Audrey, can you present briefly what is Sabon Sake, what is being the main opportunities that you have and the main challenge that you have now, but because perhaps someone here in the audience may help you.
Okay. So I run an organization, a regenerative agriculture organization, but we are the intersection of regen ag and carbon financing. And Sabon Sake means to transform in the Hausa language. For us, what we do is partner with agriculture communities that have a lot of biomass waste being generated within their communities. We convert that into organic soil amendments that go back to regenerate their degraded landscapes. And then two, we partner with corporate organizations that want to multiply their climate impact and scale. How do we do this? We connect them with the regenerative farming communities that we work with and ensure that access to carbon finance for them trickles down to them because they're doing right by the environment. I'd mention that a few of the challenges has definitely been access to finance as an organization. we bootstrapped right from the beginning, and we're looking or at a position where we want to scale from the one community that we've been working with to 3 others that are ready to also have this going. So I'd say those are the main challenges. In terms of the opportunities, it gives us the opportunity to include a lot more women farmers who usually or typically don't own a lot of land, but we are reeling them into the process of regenerative agriculture, where now they can start farms, or they're giving portions of lands to actually start and grow crops, organic crops that they can sell in the market. So we're really excited about that, and how an organization like ours can also ensure that there's increased and additional income for both women farmers, their children, and then as well some sort of land ownership in the process. Thanks.
Thank you, Audrey. And what about you, Caroline? Can you explain a bit more of the M-Kyala Ventures work, what you'll be doing to support entrepreneurs in the continent?
Okay, so it's actually M-Kyala Ventures. It's a wordplay on the word for women in a dialect called Luganda. So my work is advisory. I support organizations to, on one hand, increase access to finance for women entrepreneurs, but I also support entrepreneurial support organizations and other entrepreneurial-facing organizations to develop strategies that can enable them be gender strategic. And for us, what that means is that these organizations can start to encompass the role of gender within their processes, their systems, their decision making, and that there's fair representation of both men and women in the course of support that they provide. And our goal is really to enable or create an entrepreneurship ecosystem that supports and brings opportunities fairly across all genders. We work mainly in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, but do assignments across the continent. So very passionate about women entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. Talking about supporting, I will pass now to Nicola to tell us a little bit what, based on your experience and the BII work, what have been like the actions that you're implementing to support these amazing women that we have with us?
Great. Can you? Great, thank you. Yeah, Nicola Mustetea from British International Investment, and we are the UK's development finance institution. And we have around $7 billion assets under management that we invest in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. And climate and women's economic empowerment are really some key impacts that we want to achieve. And I guess from our perspective, one of the key steps I think that we've been taking over the last couple of years was to make it more intentional as part of our investment strategy to support women entrepreneurs in the climate space specifically. So in 2019, together with the European Investment Bank and EBRD, we actually started the 2X Climate Finance Task Force to really build out that space. And a key point for us was really that we need to have the tools and the kind of definitions and the measurement, particularly from an investor perspective. And that's why actually at COP last year, we launched the Gender Smart Climate Finance Guide together with 2X. And what that really sets out are tools, how to assess gender, how to assess climate in your investment decisions, what are the definitions, how can you bring these kind of two lenses really together on an intentional basis. And actually earlier this year, we further updated the toolkit as well. So again, there's more guidance. How do you screen investments for these sorts of impacts? How do you conduct due diligence to really assess, how you can best support women entrepreneurs in the climate space? So I think from our perspective, it's very much around making it intentional, providing the tools for investors to assess and then make these investments as well. And from our side, you know, we deployed capital already, you could say, in climate smart gender businesses. So a key investment from earlier this year was the Africa Forestry Investment Platform, which, you know, clearly has a strong climate impact in terms of carbon sequestration on the continent, local community development, and it's also 2x qualified in terms of gender finance as well. And these sorts of gender targets have also been baked into the incentive system of the fund to really progress women's empowerment there. But I think for us, and that's probably the final point from my side, it's not only about, you know, finance, it's also about the need to build a broader market for this type of investment. And I think that's why we were really excited, you know, to partner with Climate-KIC in their Climate Launchpad initiative to bring forward a particular adaptation and resilience challenge. And obviously Audrey was one of the finalists, and I think she's a prime example of, you know, the need and the impact that such a program can have. And I'm really excited, you know, about the business you just outlined, you know, that improves soil, which obviously, as you said, you know, increases farmers' income, but it also builds the resilience to climate change. So I think we're really keen, you know, to support and develop this sort of market for more women entrepreneurs in climate investing.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Before I pass back to you, let's hear from Collins. Hi, Collins. Can you share a bit from your experience in Tanzania, what Africans ESOs are doing to support women entrepreneurs and the challenge that they present just now?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again for the invitation to join this panel. It's a pleasure to join you. My name is Kimaro from the Westerwelle Foundation, which is an NGO, international NGO with hubs in Tanzania, Kigali, Rwanda, as well as in Tunisia. So today I'll be presenting the Tanzanian team. And to your question of what are African ESOs doing to help address the challenges that have just been raised, I think we see that African ESOs are hard at work, and perhaps the opportunity lies now on what can we do to help scale these initiatives. If I look at an example of a program, right, a program starts with the program design, and we see more ESOs now really taking more time with the needs assessment and agenda lens to that before designing a program, to ensure that really the program that comes to life is going to be well targeted to the beneficiaries, to the entrepreneurs, and now applying much more of a gender lens to it. So we see examples of ESOs that are organizing, for example, focus group discussions only with the women entrepreneurs or potential participants of the program to hear the nuances, because if we don't make deliberate effort to hear the nuances, then sometimes the women voice can get lost in the masses of the male applicants, for example. So that's one thing we're seeing a lot on the ground in terms of really doing a very detailed needs assessment in the beginning of the design. Then when the program is designed, going to launching the program, I think we've heard the first entrepreneur mention, I think Audrey, around the issue of language. Another really important issue we think is in terms of the visuals. So what kind of images are we using in the call for applications, in advocacy of the program, because representation matters. And so it's from our experience here, even in Tanzania, we've seen how impact it has if you have genders inclusive images that are being used on the practical things, right? This is not rocket science, but even like on the marketing posters, using more gender inclusive images that can help women visualize themselves as part of the program and then encourage them to apply. I think you already mentioned in terms of selection, having women as part of the panel as well. And we're seeing this going even further. We see some ESOs across the continent that are now having fixed quotas, saying that this program can only run if we have 40%, for example, female applicants, or even going 100% and now having only women programs. So, for example, here in Westerwelle, South Russia, we're now in partnership with Climate-KIC running Afro Green Climate Accelerator, which is only open for women applicants. So we're going to that extreme to help rebalance the numbers there. And then I think lastly, I would say that I've seen a lot of ESOs doing now is in terms of things like when do the training sessions happen? What kind of role models or mentors are we bringing into the program? Having that gender lens is also increasing, address some of those inclusion issues that the previous panelists have raised.
Thank you, Collins. Early this week, Michelle Obama reiterated her speech that if you educate a girl, you educate her entire family. We know that to build women entrepreneurship, we have to go way beyond, like we have to start early. And as Climate-KIC and many of the partners here, we have education programs. We just had a session about capabilities. So I would like to hear from you, like what interesting initiatives on this area you know about, and perhaps like starting again with Audrey and Caroline. What do you think the skills you developed earlier when you were a girl helped you now, like to be an entrepreneur, like if anything?
That's a good question. I think curiosity. I don't know. It should be a skill set, I guess. But I think building your curiosity and taking the chance when you have it or the opportunity. So I'd say as a child, I've always been one curious cat. You know, everything excites me. People excite me. Anything I don't know about, I want to find out about. So I think that has translated into why I even started Sabon Sake as a business now, and how we're thriving sustainably. You know, throughout the 2 years we've been running. And I think the second one would be building community. I've always tried to look and still look for people that have already walked the path, already have the blueprint, or people that have the knowledge that I seek. And I've found that once I'm able to build that community, interact, get to know deeper what their stories are, how they started. I've always felt that I'm not alone because I can always lean on them. And because of that, I took the chance to actually start the business because I felt that failure, I'm not scared of failure because I have a community of people that I could always lean on, ask for knowledge, you know, and then pivot if there needs to be. So I think these are the two things I'll speak on, yeah.
Oh, that's great. I think it's working now.
It is perfect.
Yeah, that's great comments. As the old saying said, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go with others. And I think women are really good into bring other people. From my experience as entrepreneur, I saw that when we were hearing speeches from women or interviews, they always mention the partners, the team, more often even the men. Like, so we always acknowledge and we want to do things together. It's also important to reiterate that women, oftentimes we are raised for perfection, so we cannot make mistakes. There are research that shows that women apply only for a job if they have 100% of the requirements, whereas men with 70% they will try. So I think we should be also role models for the girls to show that it's okay to have mistakes. Let's laugh about them and try again, but also to risk. And I think you brought very interesting things that you learned early on, and that's why it's so important to integrate these entrepreneurship programs with education programs. What about you, Caroline? I think I'm covering you. I'm sorry for this.
No, it's okay. I agree with everything that you guys have said about representation because, I mean, from my experience growing up, I grew up with a very entrepreneurial mother and in a household full of women who were entrepreneurial. But if I can think about it also from the education perspective and in Africa, I think one of the things that that is important is to ensure that both young girls and boys are told they can achieve and get the same type of opportunities. When I look back at some of like, we used to have subjects called like home economics, so like this extracurricular, the girls were sent to do the tailoring and baking. And then the guys were sent to like the carpentry and some of that, like, you know, engineering. And you look back now and you're thinking, I could have done that. I just was never invited and I was never even given the option. So I think showing young girls that your option is everything. I mean, we are influenced by Michelle Obama when you say that now. I really enjoy that she's even more popular than her husband because of what she decided to represent when she was in a position of influence. And I think for those of us who have grown, that is what we can do, is that what we represent is that every option for you to use your own agency as a woman, as a young girl, is available, and allowing girls to try things. And like you guys said, fail at it, but at least give them a chance to try, because I think that's the challenge. A lot of the cultural biases and the education system bias doesn't give young girls the opportunity to try. Except, trying to look like a princess. But beyond that, we are not given that. So we tend to grow up not believing, even when we have the skill, that we can do well. So I think that's the one thing that if I had an opportunity to change and influence, I would do that.
Well, that's a great insight. Like, for being able to do mistakes, we need to have the opportunity to try. So oftentimes we need to build up for very, very early on. What about you, Nicola? What kind of education programs or initiatives that you might sponsor as well, or like you integrate to the programs that you develop that can help with these challenges?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is it working? Thank you. So, I mean, if I just can complement, I guess, the entrepreneur perspective with the investor perspective, because I think obviously in the world of finance, I think women probably face similar challenges. So if you think about the African context, I think in 2021 only around 1% of startups that raised capital had an all-female founding leadership as well. So, and I think that just shows that more needs to be done to really match, I guess, women entrepreneurs with, you could say, women investors as well. I think that's a key challenge that we actually work, on both levels to really make sure that the kind of gap that women entrepreneurs face in access to capital is kind of bridged as well. So I guess from our perspective, when we talk to other investors in terms of education, in terms of knowledge building, what is absolutely key, obviously, is the business case for investing in women entrepreneurs. And I think, Cassia, I think you mentioned some of this in your intro already, but I think it's quite striking that women entrepreneurs are more likely, to build a business with sustainability at its core. And obviously we have great examples, on this panel underlining this point. But also if you think about the board level, if you think about the management level, I think there's increasing evidence, that diversity actually leads to better risk management, and that includes sustainability risks, that includes climate risks as well. But then also lastly, on a consumer level as well, I think women obviously influence, I think, around 80% of global, purchasing decisions, and they are more likely to go for a green product, for a green service, and really harnessing that. And I think really educating, investors more broadly that there is this kind of key business case to invest in women entrepreneurs, I think, for better sustainable outcomes as well.
We are keeping this one. Sorry. Maybe we can finalize the round about the role of education with you, Collins. Like, what have you been doing to also support our sisters here, like, to become even better entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Cassia. And I think I'll speak to one thing in particular, which I think is really practical but so powerful at the same time, which is around examples. And I see this because I don't know, growing up, if I ask you to imagine what careers did you see yourself in, I imagine many of those were dictated by who did you see around you, what did your parents do, what were their friends doing, and that's why we see across the continent children of presidents becoming presidents, children of prime ministers becoming prime ministers. Why? Because they saw it growing up. They thought, oh, if he could do it, if she could do it, I could do it too. So I think there's so much power in that, and that's something that acceleration programs, incubation programs can really emphasize practically, to give examples of successful female entrepreneurs sharing, yes, the successes and also the difficulties they went through, to provide that exposure so that other female entrepreneurs that are aspiring can see, if Audrey could do it, I can do it too. And that, I think, is more convincing than perhaps a beautiful, very well detailed design training or something like this. But if they see a practical example, it really comes to that. And we see even now in terms of our program at AfroBeam, for example, we are really trying to ensure that we have mentor sessions that are going to bring in other female successful entrepreneurs that can share their journeys to inspire those that are coming behind them, and just really let's make noise. Let's make noise about the female entrepreneurs that have gone before us that could help inspire the next generation. We see another example that's a little bit related. In Tanzania now we have a female president, and that's already starting to change the dreams of girls across the country, to see that, wow, if we can have a female president, I can be a president too. I can be a CEO too. I can be an entrepreneur too and succeed. So, and I think the role also of us as ecosystem enablers is to spark that dream, those dreams, as we are also providing technical tools and the networking and the mentorship. But so much is important in terms of igniting that motivation and helping them see what they can achieve, because that's what will push them through those difficult challenges when we're not there at their side. So I really want to emphasize this point of, let's make a lot of noise about the female entrepreneurs that are succeeding to help inspire those coming after them.
Wow, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. In Brazil, we have a congresswoman. She was elected at 25 years old. She went to Harvard and everything. And the first time she thought about university was when a teacher asked her what we were going to do at the university. She never thought about this. And that seed was planted, and many seeds were also planted, and they were watered by example of other women. So that's a great example. We will have some time for questions, but I want you to perhaps do a final round. I would like to ask you, all of you, and we can start the same order, so that what do you think accelerators and incubators should start, stop, and continue doing to foster women entrepreneurship? So nice things they are doing already, things they should start doing, and what perhaps they have to stop. And of course, if you don't have an example for the three, just do what you have. Maybe we'll start with you again, Audrey.
I think they should start focusing on mindset as a strong foundation in whatever course or teaching or interaction. And I think that should be the premise. The mindset thing and the shift is so powerful, especially with women. I feel like if you have it good up here, there's nothing that should beat you physically or on the ground. And then I think what they should continue would be building strong community and networks during the accelerator or the programs and after, because that helps foster sustainability of our businesses, and as well creates that camaraderie spirit amongst ourselves, where we can tap and see synergies within each other's businesses. And I think maybe what I think they should stop would be not just focusing on the theory, right, or the hearsays, but they should start looking at the grassroots, what's happening on the ground. Don't generalize or have generic understanding or concepts. Make sure that you start tailoring and contextualize what you do. That's it.
Well, great tips. I hope you have noted. What about you, Caroline? What are your final messages? What they should stop, start, and continue doing?
Okay, so I think the first thing I'll say is that I would ask an accelerator to think about whether the class setup model is the best way for an African entrepreneur to learn. And if it is, at what stage they would be for that to be the most suitable method. The other thing that I always tell accelerators is when you're thinking about attracting women entrepreneurs into your program, think like a business. If you had a business within your program that wanted to target a new customer segment, you would probably give them advice on, test this, figure out what they want, test your product with them, do focus groups, understand what their needs are and how to make sure you can customize your products to their needs. Keep getting feedback to increase purchasing and retention, right? And so as a program that's supposed to support entrepreneurs, you must position yourself from an entrepreneur perspective. I think sometimes the challenge is because the funding for some of these programs is grant-based, which is amazing, right? It can unfortunately skew the accelerator to believe that since we have the money, we convinced a funder for money for this program, we definitely have everything it takes to convince the entrepreneur to deliver quality, and that is very dangerous. You must remember that the customer, the end user of your program is an entrepreneur, and you must position with value. What is your value proposition? And I challenge accelerators to do that. Pitch your program to these entrepreneurs and let them believe that there is something in it that is better than all the other programs and all the peer groups that they have. And, what if she says, I've had women entrepreneurs say, but I can call my sister for business advice or marketing advice. So what are you going to tell me that is so special? And you're asking me to spend 4 weeks with you, coming every day, not going to my business. So for me, that is the challenge for accelerators. What is the value you're bringing to these entrepreneurs? Are you designing in the business language that they use, not just normal lingo, but is this how they operate with this type of wording? Do they say business model canvas when they work? How do they operate? What systems do they use? But also understand what is the most immediate need that they have in the economy and the ecosystem they're operating in now, and can you make sure that your accelerator leaves them with the thoughts? I mean, accelerator can't make you change much, but at least it can inspire your thinking to make different or better decisions for your business. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, thank you very much. And what about you, Nicola? From another perspective, what are your final comments for our target group?
Thank you. I'll probably focus on the start and continue for the kind of final comments. So, I mean, maybe the first one around, what to start, and maybe it also is a bit continuing as well. But I think one of the key things for accelerators is to think about, I guess, the broader ecosystem, of financing. So how do you move from an accelerator, an early stage startup, to the next phase of your kind of financing journey for business groups? And are there any sort of other initiatives, organizations, I think, that you can link up with to make sure, that women entrepreneurs beyond the accelerator get the actual, access to financing as well? In terms of continue, I think, this very intentional, I think, targeting of women entrepreneurs and bringing also the women perspective in the design of these accelerator programs. So obviously it's really important that, women are a key part, not only of receiving, support from the accelerator, but shaping the program in the first place. And I mean, just reflecting from a BII perspective, I think that's what we also realized. We need to improve, ourselves in terms of how we approach gender diversity in our organization in order to deploy better, climate smart gender finance as well. So I think it's also important to look at the accelerators themselves and the diversity within that.
Thank you very much. What about you, Collins? As the perspective of an African ESO, what are your recommendations for our group?
To my fellow ESOs and stakeholders, I think this is really an exciting opportunity we have. to change the direction of how our ecosystem grows. I think across much of the continent, the ecosystem is really growing, and now we get to determine how inclusive does this ecosystem grow to. So what I would say in terms of starting is similar to the point I was just mentioned before, in terms of looking inwards first and empathizing with the women entrepreneurs. I think this can be done really practically, but in a systematic way. For example, looking at our staff that is running the accelerators, looking at the mentors that we have and the diversity mix there, etc. So I think that will help us to empathize more on a day-to-day basis with the women entrepreneurs, and that will be to design inclusive programs. In terms of stopping, this is alluding to one of the points that Caroline mentioned before in terms of the trust issue, right? Where we have seen women valuing a lot more trust when it comes to interacting with an organization and programs. So I think what I'd say to stop for us as ESOL is stop rushing when it comes to this kind of programs. It's difficult to build trust. So I think it's something to think strategically about, that if you're already considering to do a program that you want to be more gender inclusive, maybe already anticipate that like maybe 6 months in advance or 1 year in advance, and start, for example, building like meetups for women entrepreneurs, so they start discovering you and your organization, your brand, and building that trust before you get to the call for application stage and are really pressed for time and rushing to do so. So I'd say stop rushing for this to allow the trust to be built. And in terms of continuing, I think this is a learning experience. So definitely, I think continue sharing best case practices. I think we're all learning from each other. Big thank you to Climate-KIC for the guide that has been produced. I'd recommend everyone to download it and be reading on it. And then also let's add to it. Let's also share experiences as we implement and learn even going further together. Thank you, Cassia.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, thank you very much to all of the speakers. It's super inspirational, super hopeful. So thank you very much. Question is, what is the role of men as fathers, as colleagues, as, you know, we live in a patriarchy, so still lots of male leaders. What's the role of men?
Who wants to start?
I'd say the role of fathers, men, would be to help foster a mindset of the can-do spirit, of security, in terms of letting the women know that, you know, they can walk their path, they can thrive, you've got their back. And I think ensuring that you can build the esteem, her self-esteem, along the way, because she's definitely faced with a lot of things aside, the entrepreneurial side, the biological side, the physical side. There's so much going on. So you being there as a rock and building letting her know that you're available and supportive. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. I will add something. I don't know if I can, but I will. I feel like totally agreeing with you. Like my father, he raised me like not different than a man. And he never told me like I couldn't do something because I was a woman. So I don't have this limiting, you know, thought. And it makes a lot of difference. So I think men around us, like you should never tell a girl that, oh, you shouldn't do this because you're a woman. No, anything. Like you should raise us to be courageous. And otherwise, like, because we can do as much or more actually than men. So like, don't raise us otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, agree with all of this. And I think the other one is around, I guess, give the space and the freedom. I think to Audrey's point earlier around trying things, making mistakes, and so on, and really having the freedom to pursue, I guess, what you want to pursue, and, you know, supporting them in that sort of journey as well.
Our online colleagues, do you want to say anything to a final word on that?
Yes. I would say, especially in maybe a workplace context, make sure you constantly ask women what they think about, you know, what is going on, whether it's in a meeting, or, you know, whatever, strategic discussion, operational discussion, a plan for a retreat, whatever it is. And I say this from experience that, you know, there are some of us who, yes, are empowered, we can speak up, but we also have to agree that we do still live in a context, like he said, it's patriarchal, right? And we tend to carry all that into all the spaces. So we spend a lot of time in the place that we work, but we are influenced a lot by how we grew up and the education systems and what we are told that we need to want. And so I've found that women in a workplace, especially those who are just starting, even those who've been there, if you can influence them through inclusion, that is where they start to develop their voice, because we might not be able to control what is outside that, but that is where they find their voice. And unfortunately, the workplace can also be extremely demoralizing in terms of bias and the bias that can come even to the most qualified woman who's empowered. You can leave Harvard and enter a workplace and be really ignored and unappreciated, and there can be a lot of bias. And I think in the context in which we work, that is something that, you know, even the finance space, the entrepreneurship space, we see that a lot. So I tell men in leadership, if you're ever in a meeting and there are women and she's not speaking, always ask everyone, but don't leave that meeting and think, oh, Caro is quiet. Women have opinions, they always do, I'm not kidding. But if they don't feel like the environment is safe, they won't say it. And when they say it, they need to be acknowledged, because if Collins goes and says the exact thing I've said in that meeting, but with some sort of meltdown, and then that's when it's recognized, we'll never speak up again. So let them speak, ask their opinion, acknowledge that opinion, and make sure that everyone knows that that is how you show inclusivity in the spaces that you work. And, you know, even if you're not in leadership, tap that lady next to you and say, we haven't heard what Caro thinks, and make sure that that becomes within the lifeblood of the organization. That's what I would add.
Thank you. And Collins, responsibility of closing this with your own experience, like as an ally, like what are your final words for men helping women entrepreneurs?
What a responsibility. Thank you, Cassia. I would say, let me quote President Obama, who said that we need the full team to play for the team to succeed. So we need both men and both women on the field to play for us to succeed. And I think sometimes it can sound scary, but I think examples you just heard are really practical things, right? Making time to listen, being conscious. For example, are we planning activities like around beers only in the evening, which can perhaps be challenging for people to join, or football matches that maybe not everybody's interested in. So I think it's putting as men, for us to put ourselves also in our women's shoes and being conscious on a daily basis. And I think that's how we're able to move forward together. But we definitely need both teams to be playing. And maybe another thing I think also men can do is, if they notice another man maybe with inappropriate behavior or creating a hostile environment, to speak up, because I think that would help set an example for other men to follow as well.
Thank you very much. Well, what a great session. Thank you, especially the Climate-KIC team that supported us, BII that is co-hosting this session with us, and Irish Aid for supporting this amazing work. If you haven't downloaded the report that we put in the beginning, you can call me, like I have the QR code, and we are going to start another section, so you can also download the report while they are setting up the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you.